The best feature of every WoW expansion. So look at this.
My worst feature of each expansion video. Recently, I did my worst feature of each expansion video, which you should totally check out. I'll link it below.
Was a good video.
And I already knew whilst I was making that I wanted to do the opposite and talk about what for me was the best feature of each expansion too. With World of Warcraft coming up to its 20th anniversary this year, there are so many things to celebrate about this game and its many additions that have been added throughout the expansions, which
2 decades of WoW.
have kept certainly me and many others coming back.
I wonder what he's going to say for vanilla.
Again. So let's do this. One-ish of the best features from each expansion World of Warcraft has seen in its near 20-year history.
The best feature... Dude, if he says ranking, I'm gonna lose my shit. There's no way he says that.
Starting from...
What expansion did I start? Vanilla WoW.
On the start in vanilla then, of course. And this has to be the easiest one on this list for me by a mile, because vanilla for me has always been about the leveling journey. And I think that's the thing which it does better than any other expansion, and that remains true to this day. Where it's different here is that it just starts in a way that no other expansion can emulate, because they are all expansions. They're starting you when you're at the previous level cap, you're geared up, you have a bunch of gold and so on. In vanilla, when you make a new character, that's it. You're level 1, you have none of your abilities, and you have the entire world in front of you. You're a small character in a big world which can eventually do great things. The level...
Dude, it's just the perfect leveling, man. That's why hardcore's been so fun, man, as well. I freaking love vanilla WoW. It's just that perfect RPG, sorry, like leveling. It's so good.
It can be slow, it can be grueling. I'm not going to argue with that, but it certainly is rewarding. And that feeling of starting as a small character and gradually rising your way up through the ranks in levels, abilities, in gear, and so on are all part of what make the vanilla leveling experience so memorable. Also, the actual world in vanilla, as in Eastern Kingdoms and Kalimdor, is absolutely massive too, and it really lends itself to the scope of this journey. But for vanilla, the best feature has to be the leveling.
I definitely agree with this though, for sure. For TBC, I could see Willy saying heroics. I could see him being like a heroic Andy. Yeah, being like, oh, I like heroics, they bring a better challenge, you know, we can go in and we can get some more difficult content. I could see that.
Onto the Burning Crusade.
Or maybe that the raids weren't like 40-man anymore. Or it could be arenas. Who knows? Let's see.
Then World of Warcraft's first expansion and many changes being made to the game. And for TBC, I'm probably going to pick something a bit different from what most of people would have picked.
He doesn't pick Eldor, right? Because that's gonna be cringe.
My choice for the best feature of Burning Crusade as an expansion is actually going to be the tier set appearances. There's one.
I will say that though, they cooked. Definitely cooked with tier sets. I will say that, but I don't know if it's the best feature of the expansion. They are really good, but the best feature, I don't know.
One exception to this, which is the Season 4 Brutal Gladiator set,
heroics
and that was
really
because
cool.
with all the other PvP seasons, they just recolored the PvE set, but in Season 4, they didn't have the chance to do this because Sunwell just added new tier pieces to tier 6. So as a result, we're just going to pretend that Season 4 gear just doesn't exist. And
I hated these sets in when I was a kid, but I actually don't mind them too much now. At least not this one here. This one looks kind of sick. I don't mind it too much. I'm really surprised he didn't say heroics though, because I feel like heroics is what that changed a lot of how you do dungeons. Like the way that you approach dungeons was very different with heroics.
look at everything else that was made in TBC. Now, the tier set bonuses back then tended to be pretty boring, to be honest. They were just a few more percentages on a damaging ability or something. But appearance-wise, pretty much everything in TBC just looks amazing. And if Cata and Beyond you're transmogging into anything from TBC, you're doing something right in my book. There are just so many iconic sets that really fit with each class's feel. You have the Malefic set for Warlocks with the wings that pop out when you jump, Paladin's a Lightbringer with a halo, Warrior's Onslaught set with its spikes and how well it matches up with the Bulwark.
I do like that the sets aren't as crazy as they are nowadays. I feel like nowadays sets are just like so insane, but they capsulate the style of what the character is, right? If the tier set's appearance is his favorite of TBC, I would say probably my favorite of TBC is probably Heroics. I think Heroics were really cool.
Of Azinov. TBC sets were so good, they reimagined them and brought them back during Tier 20, the Tomb of Sargeras during Legion. You know, Blizzard, you could get away with reimagining basically every tier set from TBC, and I'm pretty sure people will love that. Next up, Wrath of the Lich King, an expansion which changed a lot in the world of Warcraft. And maybe one which, having replayed it now in Classic, people have come to have different opinions on what was so good about Wrath of the Lich King. But my choice for this expansion has to be the alt-friendliness that it introduced. Now, with warbands in the War Within, making this statement is kind of difficult right now because warbands are just so much better in, well, pretty much every single way imaginable. But back then, Wrath of the Lich King was the peak for player alt-friendliness, and it also being the peak for sub-counts as a result. Ain't much of a...
I was just a hard modes. Yeah, I thought he was going to say hard modes as well. Wrath making all specs viable. I do like the way the specs feel, but I don't know if it's like my favorite thing about the expansion. Dual specs was great in Wrath. I think hard modes were pretty sick though.
Surprise. The word flavor of the month reroller became popular during Wrath because big class changes came with each major patch, and people could really quickly switch from one class onto the new and overpowered one. You could easily gear up through Heroics, though there was no looking for dungeon system till towards the end of the expansion, and there was a lot of standing around in Dalaran spamming need a tank. Tier 7 was so easy that practically anybody could get through it and pick up some degree of gear between 10 and 25 man. There was the Vault of Archivon for some more epics, and the emblem system to give you a way to eventually work towards pieces of gear. People even called epics back then welfare epics because items were just so plentiful and easy to get. Wrath of the Lich King for the time was the moment when the game became the most alt-friendly and the fastest to get into and pick up.
I don't know, man. This is probably it's a shit take. I know it's a shit take, but I like when I can just have one character and that's my boy, right? That's my main. That's just the one I play, dude. I'm not like a alt Andy. I don't like playing like 10 characters and like swapping them all. I just want to play one character and then crank it, right? That's my man. That's my guy. So I think that's why I've been having a lot of fun actually with War Within. I know War Within is very alt friendly, but I've actually been enjoying just playing my warrior, man. I get bored of doing the same quest and bosses and all the alts. Yeah, I just feel like it gets very repetitive if I start playing a lot of alts, and I get very burned out on the game.
A new class.
You only play 5 hours per day? Of course that should take. How do we live in a world where only playing 5 hours is little? I guess it's because, dude, Savix rated 13 hours last night. Yeah, I guess it's casual. I guess it is casual. But some days it's actually 5.5 hours. Thank you very much.
It's really no wonder why it was so popular back in the day. And then the shattering happens and we go into the Cataclysm. My favorite
feature of Cataclysm. I don't know. PvP, the transmog? Transmog is unironically pretty cool. You can hate it as much as you want, you know, but transmog is pretty dope, man. Like, it's pretty sick. In vanilla, it doesn't belong. I don't think it does. I really don't. But it's kind of cool, man. It's something to do. Transmog killed the progression visual sense. I know, in a way, but it's also like a lot of people just have the same gear anyway, right? So being able to, like, you know, change the character depending on how you want your character to look like from all the stuff you farmed is pretty cool. I don't mind it.
Feature of this expansion, having played it back in the day and now having replayed it partially now, has pretty much remained the same and definitely met my expectations. My choice for Cataclysm is without a doubt the changes made to how healing worked in World of Warcraft.
I can't speak much about this. I'm not a healing player. Have you seen the one I saw the video where a guy took almost 2 hours to clear a normal dungeon? It's only 17 and worth of watch. I haven't. I have a react channel in my Discord, or you can just link it, I guess, in my chat here, and I'll take a look. I might not watch it right now, but I can definitely watch it at some point. Visual progression dies when a new expansion drops anyway. Transmog fixes that. Yeah, I think I agree. For
So
sure.
Vanilla, TBC, and Wrath. We have healers pressing a few buttons. In Vanilla, they downranked as well. It became more difficult to go thanks to well buffs early on, and then upgrading your gear in later expansions. And it was kind of whack-a-mole gameplay, where people took spikes of damage, and then you race with all your other healers to top their health bar off. In Cataclysm, Blizzard changed this format considerably. Healers now have a bunch of different buttons to press with different mana efficiency to meet different demands. Does somebody need a heal now? Can you be more efficient? Are they going to take large amounts of damage? Each healer could feel out the situation that was about to happen damage-wise and which button is best to use. There are a lot more defensive cooldowns which just feel good to press in a raiding environment, and it feels as though you're really doing something that contributes to the raid. And mana management is absolutely a thing as well. If you tried to play Disc Priest as you do in Wrath of the Lich King, where you just spammed Power Word Shield, you would go in 30 seconds and everyone would be wondering what you're doing. For me, Cataclysm was an expansion which really grew the healer playstyle and offered a lot more skill expression for the role. I feel
like that was just in general though in Cataclysm. I think that's where like PvE started becoming a lot more, you know, intricate, a lot more like a lot more a lot harder, right? But I never really played healer, so I can't speak too much about this.
A healer back in original Cata, Resto Druid, and this time around I'm playing Resto Druid and the Holy Paladin, and it's very much been what I expected it to be. So for me, Cataclysm is all about the healing rework. Following that, we have the Mists of Pandaria, an expansion with...
I didn't play Mob, but personally, I don't know, I think I would say challenge dungeons, because that's kind of what led into, like, you know, what is it called, Mythic Plus and shit, and I think Mythic Plus is really cool, actually. I think it's a huge thing for that PvP. A lot of people say PvP was really great in Mists. Again, I didn't play Mists. I didn't, so I don't really know how the PvP was. But I heard that PvP in Mob was really insane, yeah.
With loads of different things to love. And though it was harshly criticized back in the day, we look back now and see an expansion which had a lot of positives about it. For me, the pick for Mists of Pandaria is going to be Blizzard opening up way more horizontal content when outside in the open world to do, apart from just a raid or PvP. Mists of Pandaria was the biggest jump in new content the game had seen so far, alongside the additions made in Wrath and Cata, such as achievements and archaeology. Now in Mists of Pandaria we had things such as the Brawlers Guild, challenge modes, way more collection content out in the open world, the Isle of Thunder and its little treasure collection minigame and all the things to do there. And
wait, Pet Battles was in Mob? But Mob was like a few...
on the Timeless Isle, where there was basically always something that you needed to get from there. There was the Battle Pet system too, which I've always personally enjoyed a lot, and overall there was just much more stuff to do outside of the gameplay loop of raid and PvP. Mists of Pandaria was the biggest jump in this regard.
I never did I think I did it. This is Brawlers Guild, right? I never did this really, and I know I tried it at some point, but it wasn't when it was current content.
Pandaria was the biggest jump in this regard the game has seen so far, and for that reason, that's why it's my pick for this expansion. And then we go back to the future in Warlords of Draenor.
Oh god.
For an expansion people would generally rate pretty lowly. There are some things to like about it for sure. Now I could very much mention the raids throughout this expansion as they're generally well loved by the community, but I feel as though whatever the expansion, the raiding content in this game is usually pretty good, so I don't really want to settle for that for an answer. I also think Warlords of Draenor is worthy of some honorable mentions.
Raids?
It was the first expansion to introduce mythic raiding into...
I heard raids were actually kind of giga in VOD. Like, all things aside, I know a lot of people shit on VOD, but I heard that the raids were really good in VOD.
The game. A new format of raiding which will be fixed to 20 players that would be the ultimate difficulty for the highest skill players. And yes, like Siege of Orgrimmar was technically the first mythic raid, but it was in the WoD pre-patch, so I'm counting it as a WoD feature. I think having this ultimate difficulty has met the demands of different types of players, and has also eventually given us things to watch, such as the race to world first, so I think mythic mode's pretty cool. I'd also like to mention Warlords of Draenor introduced time walking as a concept. I mean, in Warlords of Draenor,
there's soon time walking. I think is it TPC time walking? There's gonna be soon.
necessarily make that much new stuff compared to many other expansions, but I think the idea of allowing us to go back in time to see other expansions content was always going to be a good idea. A lot of people have started World of Warcraft at different points in time, so for many people it would have been new content. And here's a scary thought: Warlords of Draenor was the halfway mark in WoW's 20-year age nowadays. It came out in 2014, but my pick for Warlords of Draenor overall has to be, and what I think was ultimately the best feature, was the rework to leveling. Moving from vanilla into TBC, and especially after the...
Leveling was good in VOD. It was. I did level through the whole thing. Leveling was actually nice.
Lich King, leveling started to get a bit different with the smaller landmass, and it was often quite linear, whilst not also having those story elements that future expansions would. Now this changed quite a bit in Cataclysm when Blizzard reworked the entire world, but Warlords of Draenor was a bunch of changes on top of that system. And I have to say, looking back to Warlords of Draenor, and whenever I went to replay it, the bit of the expansion I would look forwards to would be the leveling. It would always be super fast. You'd get into the expansion, you do the opening of Shadowmoon Valley, go into Gorgrond, clear the bonus objectives, kill all the monsters that drop a quest item, hand everything in, do the bonus objectives in Spires of Iraq, and boom, you're done. You're out of the expansion already and on your way into Legion. And you could hit level cap well before clearing the map in Warlords of Draenor 2. And that's why for me, Warlords of Draenor's best feature has to have been the changes it made to leveling. And then we move on to Legion and expand.
Legion. Best feature of Legion. Again, guys, I didn't play Legion. Can't speak much about it. But, man. Yeah, these 3 expansions was like where I didn't play a lot of WoW. These 3 class halls, Mythic Plus. Oh yeah, Mythic Plus actually came out in Legion. Yeah, that's when it came out. I'd be surprised if he doesn't say that, but honestly at this point I don't even know what really he's gonna say. He keeps throwing goddamn curveballs. Class identity in general. Yeah, class halls were dope too, for real. Those were really cool. Legendary RNG items. Oh god.
Where I think I'm the most spoiled for choice out of any version of World of Warcraft so far. I've had some easy answers in some expansions so far, but here there's a lot of different things to think about. Do I want to go for the class order halls, which were just thematically brilliant? Perhaps Soromar. Still to this day, I would say the best open world zone that's ever been made, with a good story alongside it that progressed leading up to the raid in the zone. What about the overall story in Legion though? How about that moment when we defeat Kil'jaeden and we find that Illidan has brought Argus close to Azeroth so we can take the fight to them? That really must be one of the most epic story moments in World of Warcraft. These are all good choices, and there are probably even more choices worthy of a pick in Legion. But for me, I'm gonna have to go for artifact weapons. The reason I'm picking these, I think, is because they could have been an absolute disaster if they didn't go well. No weapon upgrades for an entire expansion sounded kind of like madness going into it, when usually there's such a big deal. And
so artifact weapons was like, you essentially had like a talent tree for your weapon, right? And then you leveled up that weapon or some shit?
Eventually we'd have people with the same weapon appearances and we just wouldn't be able to stand out, but Blizzard made it work. Now admittedly artifact weapons weren't the best early game because you had to put artifact power into them and then you try and change spec and work on another one. And
generally speaking, I'm not a big fan of like borrowed power that you just lose at the end of the expansion, because it's like, I don't know, you just work all that up and then it all gets removed, but I guess it seems cool enough. I don't know, I didn't play with it, so I don't know.
They fixed this later with artifact knowledge, increasing the amount of artifact power you could get, but that was kind of the key negative to them in my opinion. The quests to pick up artifact weapons were fun to do too, and when you got them they gave so many fun and impactful abilities, such as Odin's Fury for Fury Warriors, Stormkeeper for Elemental Shaman, Soul Flame for Affliction Lock, Phoenix Flames for Fire Mage, and many more. And there were loads of different appearances for these weapons too, from a variety of content. From
all gears borrowed power? Well, not really, because gear doesn't really have a talent tree and like, you know, different like abilities that you gain from them usually. So not necessarily, but I see what you're trying to say with it, yeah.
Open world, raids, PvP, there were hidden appearances with mini quests tied into them, and then later on there were the Mage Tower appearances as well, as a bit of a flex if you got them early on, and something that everyone could work towards in time,
that was in Legion too.
And in a later patch we had more abilities added to our artifact weapons too, and they were truly a tier of weapon above legendaries. These were artifacts. We wielded Doomhammer, the Ashbringer, Fellow Malor, Dawn, and so many more. Legion absolutely knocked class fantasy.
Yeah, there was actually a lot of shit in
park,
Legion.
And artifact weapons for me were a big part of that. And then we get on to BFA, an expansion which has, well, less choices than Legion, shall we say. My pick for BFA is going to be the allied races. Now hold...
Dude, I guess. I mean, it's some like, you know, faction fantasy, I guess, yeah.
Before you say, weren't they added in Legion? They kind of were. They were added in patch 7.3.5, but you needed to have pre-ordered BFA in order to get them. So I'm gonna count them as a BFA feature.
Dude, BFA was so bad that he chose an actual Legion thing and made that the BFA good thing.
Allied races added a bunch more customization into the game, new appearances that we hadn't seen before, and it allowed to match your class and role to the race which you felt as though it fit with the most thematically. And since then it's been a system that's been built on loads with tons of new additions each expansion. Also there's the whole quest to get allied races in the first place, which give you a nice bit of lore and background. So overall I think allied races have been a good addition to the game. Next up we have Shadowlands, and Shadowlands is actually a really easy one for me to...
You think he's gonna say Torghast? What if, maybe?
Pick the best part of it. So there was this thing that happened quite late into the expansion. It was actually after the final patch called Dragonflight. Okay, but for real, there were some good things about Shadowlands too, whatever people say about it. I think one of the better features of the expansion were the customization updates made to your character. The character creation screen was updated, and there were just generally a ton more options in the game. I think another good addition this expansion made was Chromie time, or the time walking campaign. Because by this point in time, if you're a newer player to World of Warcraft, it must have been incredibly confusing to try and level through this game. You'd get halfway through a zone or a story or, you know, an expansion, you'd start to over-level everything, and then you just stop earning experience, which is any good, and then you need to try and work out where to go next. Chromie time...
yeah, I think I agree, Aspie. I think BFA and Shadowlands was probably the worst expansion that they did. Like, those two are just so shit.
Made it so you could go pick an expansion, level there, see what it's all about, and
well,
then
I was hitting in a bad,
level,
like,
you can move
towards
on to
a bad
the Shadowlands content. There was also Exile's Reach as a new alternative starter zone, which I kind of find people either really love it or they don't like it. I have to say I definitely prefer the more race-specific starter zones rather than a one-size-fits-all approach, but it was something new to experience for newer players as well.
I think it's a good introduction to the game too. Yeah. But if it was bad, no way to take the place of VOD. I don't know. I think I have a really bad memory of VOD because I got all my friends left me alone when they said we were all gonna play together, and I bought the game, and then I leveled up to max level, and then they all quit, and then I stopped playing.
Overall, I think the customization options and Chromie time were both good updates from the Shadowlands, and overall, I'm gonna have to pick Chromie time. And then we get on to Dragonflight, where I have a quick honorable mention for Awakened raids. Blizzard have been struggling for years to give people a valuable reason to go back to old raids during the life cycle of an expansion to get a bit more, well, content out of them. When a raid becomes Awakened, it offers a higher level of difficulty and better loot, and it just generally gives people a reason to go back and see older content, or perhaps for people who have joined the expansion a bit later to have the same reason to be able to go back. So I think Awaken raids were a great idea, but my choice overall for Dragonflight is dragonriding, and this one is a complete no-brainer. For me, it really fit with the theme of the expansion. There were so many big open zones, it feels so fast to get around, there's weight to your mounts, and they just feel good to use. It's much more interactive than hopping on your mount, pressing your auto-run button, and then going to get a drink or something. I've been playing some War Within recently, and when I hop on Cataclysm, mount up, and then press my Skyward Ascent button, and nothing happens, and I'm like, oh yeah, we don't have that here, do we? Wish we did. Blizzard also tied in more content to dragon riding, such as the customization for mounts and the various ways you can pick up those customizations, as well as the dragon riding races. Just overall a very good bit of content, fit well with the expansion, and it's something I'm glad they've extended to other mounts now. And then finally we have the War Within.
War Within. Best feature of War Within. I think actually delves are really cool. If they keep working on delves and like actually making them like really good and nice. There's been a lot of issues with delves, I think. which is, you know, because of the way that they've been tuned, kind of shitty. There's also the warbands. Warbands are genuinely really good as well. Yeah, it might be warbands. I think warbands are probably going to be his pick because they just make it so much easier to have alts. Like, so much easier, right? It's ridiculous.
To pick something when we're so early into the expansion, but I picked something for the worst video, so I'm gonna pick something for the best video as well. And for me, at this very early stage, what I think people will look back to in the War Within and say this was the best feature will be warbands.
Yeah.
It's just a much smoother user experience having all your characters on one page, and the game figures out the server for you rather than you having to swap about. You get to pick your favorite characters and have them on the screen. Not exactly the first MMO to do this, but it's a cool feature either way. You can trade typically untradeable things cross-character, such as currencies. You can work towards renown, quest completion, and so on multiple different characters. So even when you're playing your alts, you're doing something which is worthwhile for your main too. And warbands just makes it so there's this constant feeling of progression and working towards something, and that's a large factor in MMOs. And that's why for me at this early stage in the War Within, I'm gonna pick warbands. And that is everything. The best feature from each World of Warcraft expansion so far. Let me know what you think. Were there any that you agree with, disagree with? Would have you put something completely different? Let me know in the comments down below. And as always, thank you all so much for watching and listening in. And I'll see you on the next one.
Some of them were a little bit of curveballs, but I agree with most of it, I would say. Really nice videos to watch, actually. I enjoyed that a lot. That was really good. I feel like transmogging from Kata should be mentioned. I'm really surprised he didn't mention that. Because, like, that, yeah, it gave a whole new freaking, like endgame thing for people to do. Especially for casual players, yeah. It was very, very good, for sure. But, yeah.